Hi, everybody, and welcome to Out of the Gate, Daily Racing Forum's weekend handicapping preview program. I'm your host, Dan Illman. Thanks so much for watching. Here's what's coming up on this week's show. DRF Handicappers Mike Beard, David Aragona, and I will take a look at three intriguing stakes races from around the country. The DRF Bet Saturday race of the day, the graded Raven Run Stakes at Keeneland, the Maryland Million Classic in Laurel, and the Empire Classic at Belmont. Nicole Russo's Pedigree Pick segment focuses on one of the two-year-old state-bred races at Belmont, and Craig Milkowski from Timeform US projects the pace of the Maryland Million Sprint, plus best bets, horses to watch, and lots more. So let's break Out of the Gate. We begin Out of the Gate with our Horse Watch segment. I want to remind everybody that our colleague David Aragona will have his weekly Horses to Watch segment on video.drf.com and the Daily Racing Forum YouTube channel. Next Tuesday, he'll profile several horses to watch on the NYRA circuit. Speaking of the NYRA circuit, Mike Beer, NYRA analyst, you found a very sharp last out winner at Belmont.
Yeah, this is a debut winner as well for Kieran McLaughlin, a Shar, a two-year-old colt by Into Mischief. They paid big money for this horse as a yearling, Dan, $650,000. Let's look at his debut now. We're going to pick it up at the top of the stretch. He's on the lead right now. This horse showed good speed at the start, but he came to hand really nicely when somebody else wanted the lead, and he just walked by that horse at the top of the stretch. He's going to take over here. He's going to run away from this field, and Joe Bravo is going to take him in hand late. This was a really impressive debut, a horse who has a lot of pedigree, 80 Beyer speed figure, and forward to go.
Looks like he has a lot of stakes potential. Now, my Horse Watch does not have a lot of stakes potential. That's Passport, who's a 4-year-old gelding who's 1 for 24 lifetime. But many of Passport's losses have come on the dirt. He's really a turf horse. 2 starts back, he finished third in a starter handicap behind High Noon Rider, who's an old classmaster, finding his best form. After that race, they dropped him all the way back in distance to a mile in the starter optional claimer. And we'll take it from the gate. Passport's breaking out of here, and he's breaking slow, the number 7, and he's immediately behind the 8 ball, and he doesn't seem very happy about it. He's pulling his jockey, and remember, in his prior race, he was on the lead. They do not go fast in this 1-mile race at Laurel. 24 and change, 49, and this horse is pulling. And we'll pick up the second part of this replay as they go into the backstretch, and he is already 5 wide at the back of the pack, and the jockey is saying, listen, there's no pace. I'm having trouble holding this horse. I am just going to make this big harness brush to get into contention, and he moves right up from last to third in a matter of strides. We'll pick it up in the stretch, and he's still punching on. He's third in those blue blinkers, and he's just going to get tired in the final 16th of a mile. He's only beaten a length and a half. He got a solid enough 68 Beyer speed figure for this effort. He's trained by a low-profile conditioner in Susan McBride. This horse is always going to be a price. Keep an eye out for Passport in the starter optional claiming ranks at Laurel over the next few weeks. Let's get to some handicapping. The DRF Bets race of the day for Saturday, the Raven Run at Keeneland. Let's throw up the feature race at Keeneland on Saturday. It's your DRF Bets Saturday race of the day, the Grade 2 Raven Run Stakes, and you can access free formulator past performances for the Raven Run on the Race of the Day event page at DRF.com. And for expanded stakes previews of many of the major stakes races all weekend long, head on over to video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Forum YouTube channel. Our colleague David Aragona, he's got a 12-to-1 shot that he likes in the Raven Run.
I found this Raven Run to be a pretty fascinating race. You could make a case for a lot of the contenders in this field. I mean, obviously, Chad Brown holds a very strong hand with the Prior's winner, Royal Charlotte, and that recent impressive maiden winner, Indian Pride. Indian Pride is predicted to get a pretty favorable trip in this spot because if you look at the Timeform US pace projector, she's on a clear lead in a situation where nobody else really wants to contest the front end. I respect Indian Pride's talent. I just question the quality of that maiden field at Saratoga and whether she can get the extra furlong. I'll be using her as well as Royal Charlotte, but there are plenty of others to consider. I mean, First Star is dangerous, Horologist is dangerous on the turn back, but I want to go to the outside, the number 11 Irish Mischief for my top pick. Now, I have no illusions. I don't think I'm going to get that 12-to-1 on Irish Mischief, but I'd be content with even half of that price because she ran legitimately high speed figures in her races 2 and 3 back at Churchill Downs and Ellis Park. I think those numbers really do stand up to scrutiny. And then last time out in the Charlestown Oaks, she was the 6-to-5 favorite and she lost, but She did not get the right trip that day. Going the 2 turns, I think they just rated her in a spot where it seemed like there was a lot of other speed, but the pace just didn't really develop as it was predicted to, and she ended up getting rank behind horses, having to settle at the back of the pack. She made a wide run around the far turn and sort of got there at the end, but just couldn't really sustain it going that 2-turn distance. I think this outside post, getting a stalking trip, going the 7 furlongs is really going to suit her, and if she gets the right kind of setup here, I think she's a dangerous horse at what could be a middling price. So Irish Mischief for me in the Raven Run.
Mike Beer, David has a 12-to-1 shot on the morning line. You're going with even bigger price in this race. It's that wide open of a field. Your top selection took a good run at a good horse last time out. Might be getting a little hidden class relief.
Yeah, that's what I like about Free Cover, the 5 in this race. She's going to be a big price, but it's a kind of a wide open race where I don't think you necessarily want to settle for one of the favorites in here. Just sort of a wide open race. Free Cover started out her career like she was going to be pretty good. In their 5 sprints early on, you know, a couple wins, couple of seconds. She had bumped into Covfefe early in the year as well. She got a little bit of a layoff, and I think she's come back with 2 really improved efforts, Dan. At Ellis Park back at the end of August, a big blowout win in an allowance race with a new buyer top. And then she came back in the Dogwood last time, and I just think it's a race worth watching. Steadied after the start, and then just made this big outside run at Covfefe around the turn. She wasn't going to beat that horse. But I think she ran deceptively well last time before she got tired. She just keeps improving. I thought maybe she'd sit a trip in this race at a price. It's sort of wide open. I'm going to give this horse a chance in the Raven Run.
Trainer Chad Brown has a couple of very strong contenders in this field, and the number 3 Indian Pride, and my top selection, the number 1 Royal Charlotte. Royal Charlotte's only hiccup on her record came with a very puzzling effort in the Grade 1 test, a race in which she just didn't show up against the likes of Covfefe and Kentucky Oaks winner Serengeti Empress, but she bounced back with a plum in the Prioress last time out at Saratoga. She is right in behind the leader, and that is break even. Odds on in this race, and coming into this race, 6 for 6 lifetime. Javier Castellano looking for some room. He spies it now outside of break even, and he's going to wear down this short-priced favorite in the shadow of the wire. This is the fastest race in Royal Charlotte's 6-race career, a 92 Beyer speed figure. I like her tactical speed. I'm not concerned about the stretch out to 7. And again, other than the test hiccup, she's been very consistent throughout her career. I think she gets the jump on the closers in here, and it might be yet another graded stakes victory for Mr. Chad Brown. Nicole Russo's pedigree pick segment focuses on the Sleepy Hollow Stakes at Belmont. Then we'll take a quick break, but come right back. We got lots of stakes action and best bets still to come on Out of the Gate.
Hey everyone, Nicole Russo coming to you from Lexington, Kentucky for Out of the Gate. A lot of state-bred programs are showcased this weekend, including up at Belmont, where they'll host Empire Showcase Day. I want to take a look at a couple of the New York-bred 2-year-olds on the card. So let's start by taking a look at the field for the Sleepy Hollow Stakes. This race has drawn the top 3 finishers from the Bertram Vanguard, which is essentially the local prep, in Cleon Jones, 3 Jokers, and City Man. However, earning a higher buyer than all of them, and in fact the top buyer in this field was Harris Bay, who posted a 78 in his debut and was flattered when runner-up Dream Bigger came back to win a stakes at Finger Lakes. A lot of speed in the female family for Harris Bay, whose maiden win we'll take a look at now, but I do feel that he can stretch out from that 6 furlongs to the mile of the Sleepy Hollow because of his sire, current freshman Carpe Diem. Now, Carpe Diem was a very fast and well-regarded 2-year-old, but he was really at his best going 2 turns. He earned his major wins in the Breeders' Futurity at Keeneland in the fall of his juvenile season, and then won the Bluegrass the following spring. So I do expect his runners to continue to develop into the fall here and to be able to get a bit of a route. Now, earlier on the card, the Sleepy Hollow's sister race is this race, the Maid of the Mist for 2-year-old fillies. And the name that immediately jumped out to me is Firenze Freedom, a half-sister to Firenze Fire, who won the Grade 1 Champagne going this identical 1-turn mile at Belmont. There's plenty of depth and distance in this female family. It's actually the extended family of classic producer Otzi. And Firenze Freedom won her debut, which we'll watch right now, going 7 furlongs at Belmont. I don't see adding one more furlong to be a problem for her at all, particularly when you add in her sire to the mix of that female family. Istan's very best runners have done their best work at routes, including current 3-year-old filly Street Band, who won the Grade 1 Cotillion over a stellar field last month and is bound for the Breeders' Cup Distaff. I do like Firenze Freedom getting the opportunity to go a mile here. Thanks for tuning in this weekend Out of the Gate. We're going to take a quick break and then get you back to the team for a closer look at some of the state-bred action in New York and Maryland this weekend.
Are you a horse player looking to raise your game? For over 120 years, expert handicappers have relied on Daily Racing Form as their must-have source for news and data, featuring exclusive buyer speed figures, Timeform US pace figures, and integrated replays. DRF Formulator is the most powerful handicapping tool on the market today. Use what the pros use. Go to drf.com/formulator and enter code DRFTV to get your first card free. drf.com. Raise your game.
So you think horse racing is all about fancy hats and mint juleps?
But horse racing is a big business in the Commonwealth, from the breeding shed to the racetrack.
It's all part of a multi-billion-dollar industry.
So I bet you're wondering, where do I start?
We all have the same answer.
U of L,
U of L.
the University of Louisville.
We're all graduates of the Equine Industry Program.
So what are you waiting for?
The U of L Equine Industry Program has been developing leaders for over 32 years. Apply today.
Welcome back to Out of the Gate. Let's throw up the field for the feature race on Maryland's Day at the Races at Laurel Park on Saturday. State-bred stakes races galore, headed by the Maryland Million Classic. Carded as race number 10, $150,000 is the purse. They're going a mile and an eighth. For expanded stakes previews of many of the major races all weekend long, head on over to video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Our colleague David Aragona likes a multiple stakes winner that's taking his third crack at the Maryland Million Classic. Let's see who he picked.
So assuming that none of these also eligible runners do draw into this race, it really is all about Clubman within the main body of the field in this Maryland Million Classic. I get that some might say he's a vulnerable favorite because the mile and an eighth distance is a bit of a stretch for him. He's gone 2 turns in the past, but he's really only gone up to a mile and 16th and been successful. He hasn't really gone this 9 furlong distance. I'm not going to get too concerned about that because he's just run a series of speed figures, whether we're looking at buyer numbers or Timeform US speed figures, that just make him significantly faster than everybody else in this race. There's a little bit of pace for him to close into, and it's going to suit his late running style. I think Julian Pimentel has ridden him very well when he's gotten on him in the past, and I just couldn't find an alternative to Clubman. I don't love the short price. I just think he's very likely to win this race if he gets any kind of trip. If I'm playing exotics, I'll use a horse like the number 8 Tappin' Cat underneath, because Tappin' Cat feels like a horse that might appreciate the stretch out in distance. He's got a pedigree that says stamina's not really supposed to be an issue. It just seems like he's a 3-year-old that's improving at the right time and is trending up in the right direction. So I'll try to get him in for second or third at a price, but I really do think it's all about Clubman in the Maryland Million Classic.
Mike David likes the morning line favorite Clubman in here. You're going with a horse that was the beaten favorite last time out, but maybe that race isn't as kind of awkward as it looks on paper. That horse that beat him's okay.
Yeah, I don't think you like to see a horse lose at 3 to 5 necessarily, but he did. It feels like he bumped into a hot horse last time, a horse who was shipping in from Churchill Downs off the claim for a hot trainer. I like the 11 Torch of Truth. We're going to look at that race right now. This is him losing his last start, but I still think he ran well then. There was pace in this race. He came with a run. The winner is right to his inside here. He's just going to get outgamed by that horse a little bit, but he still ran well. I thought this is a horse whose first 8 starts were all sprints. Jamie Ness claimed him in August, stretched him right out, and he's responded with the 2 fastest races of his life. I like the fact that he's improved on the stretch out. He doesn't have a great post in here, but he might be an okay price.
I want a horse that's going to be close to the pace in here, and I think the number 8 Tappin' Cat fits the bill, stretching out from 6 furlongs for trainer Gary Capuano. I liked his race 3 starts back. In the Star de Nascra, it was a restricted stakes going 6 furlongs. He stayed inside when he could have swung out for a clear run in the upper stretch. He finally did alter course to the outside, and he only got beat a half length. Most recently, they dropped him into a starter allowance at Delaware, and we'll take a look at that race right now, and he was on a hard chase. The leader right now, Kid Slipper, had been loose Tappan Cat has been chasing. Tappan Cat is going to show some heart and determination and wear this horse down to earn a career-best 82 Beyer speed figure. Now, stretching out 3 furlongs is no bargain, but when you look at this female family, it's dotted with names like Peaks and Valleys, a horse that won the Molson Million and I believe the Meadowlands Cup, and Alternate, who won 2 editions of the Robert G. Dick Memorial at 1 3/8. So there's some hope for me that this one has enough pedigree to last the distance, and I think he can get forward under Ruiz in the early portion of this race. If the pace is slow, maybe Tappan Cat can take them all the way home. At a big price, he's 10-1 on the morning line. We'll move from Laurel to Belmont, from Maryland's Day at the races to New York Showcase Day for the feature at Belmont, the Empire Classic. Here's the field for the Empire Classic, the feature race on New York Showcase Saturday at Belmont. Lots of state-bred stakes action over Big Sandy and over the 2 turf courses. And for expanded stakes previews of many of the major races all weekend long, visit video.drf.com or the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel. Mike, there are 2 short-priced favorites in this race. I want to talk a little bit about Dynamax Prime, however, in case the pace heats up. This horse came close to Mr. Buff 2 and 3 starts back, was put in a tough optional claimer last time out. Let's watch that last race from Dynamax Prime, and I thought he ran okay. This was a decent field. He's the kind of horse that may not be of the class of the 2 favorites, but he could get a little bit lucky with some hitting up front.
Yeah, he's going to need some horses to race each other up in front, and then he'll try and come running and pick up pieces. That's his running style from off the pace. He ran fine in this race. Performer, who wins it, looks like a stakes horse for Shug. This was a good field. His races 2 and 3 back, I thought he ran well in those races too, Dan. He was just no match for Mr. Buff either time, but he's really improved for Rob Atras in his recent starts. And if they go hard and heavy in front of him, he'll be running at the end.
David's top selection in this race really excels at the 1 1/8 distance. Let's hear his case.
I do think this Empire Classic is essentially a match race between the 2 likely favorites, Pat on the Back and Mr. Buff. I've got a ton of respect for Pat on the Back's versatility, his consistency, his talent. He's coming off arguably the best effort of his career in the Kelso last time. My thing about Pat on the Back is I've always thought he's best going the mile. He can get 7 furlongs, he can get 1 1/8, but I don't think 1 1/8 is really his best distance. I know he won this race last year, but that was a slightly weaker field, or I'll say he wasn't facing a foe of the quality of the 5-year-old Mr. Buff, because Mr. Buff, he did beat him in the Empire Classic last year, but Mr. Buff is in much better form right now, and I think Mr. Buff is going to be a formidable foe for Pat on the Back if he gets back to his races that he ran in the Saginaw and the Evan Shipman. If you look at the time formula speed figures he ran in those races, they're higher than anything that Pat on the Back has earned recently, and I know he disappointed in the Woodward last time. I don't really want to hold that performance against Mr. Buff because he got some pressure on the front end, and horses like Preservationist and Yoshida, they're just really better than Mr. Buff, so he's dropping back down in class to face the New York breds, and he's drawn well outside. He can just stalk a horse like Not That Brady, who might go on to set the pace. I don't really mind that. I think he's going to get a fine trip in here, and Mr. Buff just loves the 1 1/8 distance, so I'm going to give Mr. Buff the slight edge over Pat on the Back. He'll be a slightly better price, but I really do think it's all about these 2, and it should be a fun matchup to watch.
Mike David likes Mr. Buff in here. We're hoping that maybe Mr. Buff can get softened up early by Not That Brady. It's not like Pat on the Back needs a lot of help. He's in razor-sharp form for Jeremiah Engelhardt.
No, he doesn't really need that much help. He's not going to be compromised by pace in this race. I suppose you could make the argument that the 9 furlongs helps Mr. Buff more than Pat on the Back, but I don't know if that's necessarily borne out by results. Pat on the Back doesn't go that long very often. But he's run really well over this distance, including last year when he beat Mr. Buff on the square. This is his most recent start. This is a 1-turn mile, probably more along the lines of Pat on the Back's best distance. This is also a grade 2 race against some really nice horses. And, he's very game to win this race. He's beaten a very nice horse here in Prince Lucky, a 103 Beyer speed figure. To me, he's just way the horse to beat. And I greatly respect Mr. Buff, but this horse is way the horse to beat.
I agree. I landed on Pat on the Back as well. Prince Lucky, when he is right, is a pretty crack miler, especially at Belmont. Pat on the Back handled him. Love his tactical speed. Think he can sit 3rd in here. And he'll probably be gearing up when the real running begins at about the 3/8 to 5/16 pole. He won this race last year. It allays fears about the additional 1/8 of a mile. I'll go with Pat on the Back in the Empire Classic. Craig Milkowski from Timeform US looks at one of the undercard races at Laurel on Saturday. It's the Maryland Million Sprint, and the pace should be hot.
Hi, this is Craig Milkowski at Timeform US for this week's edition of Out of the Gate. For this week's edition, I'm going to take a look at the Maryland Million Sprint Handicap being run at 6 furlongs at Laurel as the 9th race. This is one of the bigger races on Maryland Million Day, which has been run since 1986. Laurel is one of my own stomping grounds where I first got into horse racing, and I was actually at that very first Maryland Million. So always a pretty exciting day for me. Takes me back to my roots, and I also think we have a very good betting race on tap here. Let's take a look at the preview page, and you'll see that the pace projector in the upper right hand corner that there thinks that the pace is going to be fast. That's indicated by the red little see details box, and you can see the running styles of some of the horses. We have a couple leaders, we have a speed, we have some trackers in here, so it does look like the pace is going to be quick. Not only is it going to be quick, let's take a closer look at the pace projector itself. You can see 3 horses right up on the front end there, the 3, 4, and 7 horses, who we'll take a look at a couple of those here in just a minute. But not only do we think the pace will be fast, it's likely to be contested, which is usually trouble for horses who need the lead. Let's start with number 4, One More Great Time. He's a horse who came off a bit of a long layoff. He came back as a first-time gelding, and he ran a good race. He won at 5.5 furlongs. He chased a fast pace. You can see that 142 in red. That's the pace figure of the leader. That's how I have my settings. You can set that how you like. You can see the horses if you prefer. But he only ran a 113 that day, so pretty much on par with what he's been doing. What I did note was his last 3 6-furlong races, he's always been on the lead. He doesn't quite have the speed to make the lead at 5.5 against really strong fields, but he does press the pace. It slows down a little at 6, and he usually finds himself right up on the front. Call Paul, who's actually the morning line favorite in here, is a 3-year-old taking on older horses. And he's a bit of an interesting horse. I didn't read through the exact conditions, but he's running races that had Pennsylvania restrictions. His last race was a race at Delaware Park, which was limited to either Delaware bred or sired or something. I'd have to read through the exact race conditions, which you can get by clicking on that oval with the conditions in there and read them. But here he's in against Maryland sired horses. He's, again, morning line favorite. He's a horse that has a lot of speed, and you can see he usually wins when he is right up on the lead. When he doesn't make it, he struggles a little bit, and I think that's going to be the case here. He's a fast horse. He certainly wouldn't shock me, but given the predicted pace scenario and the short price, not really a horse I'm interested in. Another horse, a quick horse who was right up there on our pace projector, is number 3, Lewisfield. He actually won this race in a romp last year. I think it just dropped off what I'm showing on the screen. But he is a very fast horse as well. He's not quite in that same form. He's tailed off a little bit lately. He lost his last race at Colonial at 9-5 to the really quick Mr. Jagermeister. But again, he's another one. He does his best running when he's up on the front, preferably uncontested, and I don't think he's going to get that here at all. The logical choice would be number 6, Lackey. He has the best Timeform US late pace rating in here. He came off a bit of a respite. It's his 3rd race since then. Don't be fooled by that 6th place beaten 4 lengths. He was behind Lasting Legacy, a very tough Jason Service horse who's in really top form right now at Monmouth Park. Much better than that listed stake would indicate. He's a horse who should get a nice setup. I fully expect him to run well. He's 5-2 on the morning line, so he's not going to be my top pick, but I am going to use him in exactas. And the horse I'm going to use him with, the horse I'm hoping to add a little more value to the bet, is number 2, Taco Supreme. He's not really a closer, a horse that you might think you'd look for in a race that's packed with speed. But at this short 6-furlong distance, he's a horse who has proven he can lay just off the pace. He can make up a few lengths if he needs to. He has really good tactical speed. And I also think 6 furlongs is his best distance. He's got a much better record at 6 furlongs. He's run 1 3 times there, where he's only won 3 out of 11 at other distances. I forget exactly how many 6 furlong starts he has, but it's much less than that. And he's a horse who's really improving. I like that his speed figure last time really jumped up to a 117 at 7 furlongs, where he was probably not really in a position he wants to be in, right up on the front in a 3-horse speed duel. He battled, took the lead, and just didn't have enough late. But this turn back to 6 furlongs, I think, is going to be right up his alley. And at the 10-1 morning line or anywhere near that, he's going to be my top selection. So again, for this week, I'm going to go with number 2, Taco Supreme. I'm going to play him in an exacta box with number 6, Lackey. That does it for this week, and I'll see you again next week on Out of the Gate.
Time for our best bet segment here on Out of the Gate. Our colleague David Aragona is rolling a pair of 7s at Belmont on Saturday.
My best bet on Saturday is another one of those stakes races at Belmont Park, that New York bred program. It's the Iroquois in race number 7, and I like the number 7, Satisfy. Now, she's the favorite on the morning line, but she's just a lukewarm favorite because it's a pretty competitive race. There are a lot of horses to consider, and Satisfy, she was obviously pretty good last year because she finished 2nd in this race in 2018 when she really was in very good form for Bill Mott as a 4-year-old. She was off for a long time at the beginning of this year, obviously had a setback, but she finally made her return at Monmouth Park last time in September, and I want to watch part of that race because coming around the far turn, you can see that Joe Bravo, who's riding her this day, just really has nowhere to go. It was a packed field of horses, really bunched up on the far turn, leaving the backstretch, and she's just kind of in behind runners. This is the part of the race where you want to be making a move, and she just is sort of in traffic. He's got a wedger between runners at the quarter pole, comes back inside. I just don't think this was the worst trip in the world, but it also wasn't the kind of trip that you really want to get when you're on a closer like Satisfy. And furthermore, the 2 horses that are finishing 1st and 2nd in this race, Bronx Beauty and Miss Locust Point, they're actually pretty good open company runners. I mean, they've been posting pretty high speed figures in the Mid-Atlantic region all spring and summer, so they're nice horses, and I don't think it's a big disgrace that Satisfy lost that race. She's likely to take a step forward 2nd off the layoff. She's getting her regular rider, Junior Alvarado, back aboard, and I just think if she shows up with her best race, she's better than horses like Holiday Disguise and Carrera Cat, who have been running in this condition for the past few months. So I'm going to hope that Satisfy is somewhere around 5-2, 3-1, because I think that's a fair price on her, and she's my best bet on Saturday at Belmont Park.
Mike Beer, Naira analyst, your best bet at beautiful Belmont Park on Saturday. Empire Distaff, I believe.
Yeah, race number 10 is the Empire Distaff. It's sort of a big field. You know, you're not going to get a huge price on number 1, newly minted. But there is another horse sort of streaking into this spot off of a really fast race. So that could help newly minted go off at least a reasonable price in this race. We're going to look at her last win. This is a filly who is undefeated on dirt in her career. This is her stretching out at Saratoga, 9 furlongs. It seemed like that could be some question for her if she wanted to go that far. She had no problem, Dan. She dusted this field. So far, they just haven't really come close to finding out how good she is, I don't think. I like her cutting back to the mile in this race. I'm just hoping with the big field and that other horse in here, you might actually get to play her at even a reasonable price in this race. I just think she's really good.
I'm going to go to Laurel, race number 8, number 8, Cannon's Roar. This horse was claimed over the summer of 2018 for $16,000 by trainer Dale Capuano. Has hit the board in his last 6 races, including the most recent effort in an open allowance company on September the 28th. Let's pick this up on the backstretch, and we see this horse going into the first turn extremely wide, and the jockey's just going to have to make a decision. He's going to really rush up in here to get into contention, and I wonder if this takes a little bit of the starch out of Cannon's Roar. He pulls his way up right up onto this hot pace. He gets up close, and we'll pick it up as they swing into the stretch. He's in those pink blinkers, and he's still punching along, so much so that he's actually going to make the front. And then this odds-on favorite, the gray Classmaster, Strike Me Down, is going to wear him down from the inside. All in all, I thought this was a very promising effort from Cannon's Roar. He just couldn't get cover from that far outside post at Laurel last time out, and I'm hoping he can perhaps relax a little bit better in behind horses and make one run on this occasion. That's race number 8, number 8, Cannon's Roar at Laurel on Saturday. We thank you for watching Out of the Gate, and we urge you to follow all of DRFTV's latest offerings on social media. Please follow on Twitter at DRF Video, and for the latest news and notes from America's Turf Authority Daily Racing Forum, please follow on Twitter at DRF Inside Post. That's it for this week. Best of luck when your horses break out of the gate.